Hello, and welcome to the third episode of Connected Construction, brought to you by World Highways Magazine, part of Route 1 Publishing. I'm Guy Woodford, and in this latest series episode, following the highly successful latest editions of Bauma and ConExpo ConAg, we are again looking at machine control. There are many big questions in this area, and I've got a trio of experts joining me to answer them. Elwyn McLachlan, Vice President of Civil Solutions at Trimble, Murray Lodge, Senior Vice President and General Manager of Construction at TopCon Positioning Group, and Magnus Thibblin, Vice President Heavy Construction at Hexagon Geosystems. If I could start with you, Elwyn, looking at progress on and projections for interoperability between major supplier technologies. Can you talk us through how you see that?
Trimble's very engaged in the ISO work that's going on at the moment. I'm going to remember the name, the ISO 15143-4 standards.
Very good.
And the representatives we have on the committee tell me that that work is going very well, and that we certainly are optimistic that will be the key to the interoperability between the different technology vendors. There is a high level, I would say, of customer interest in this. We have large customers who run different machine control technology across their fleet, and they are pushing hard for the industry to cooperate and collaborate. And where our customers go, we go. So we're certainly in support of that.
And Murray, your take on this, and how difficult is it for you to all sort of work together in this area?
It really hasn't been that difficult. As Elwyn said, our customers are asking for it. They want it. So we've also all been involved in that ISO. There's actually three different pieces that they're focusing on. So the first is the file format. So you have a common file format that everybody can use. And then it gets into a radio, a communication. And then this last one would be the RTK format. And the OEMs are all engaged. The belief maybe is by the end of this calendar year that there may be a standard in place, but it's been ongoing because you've got so many different entities into it. So it's progressing, and it will eventually get there.
Thank you. And Magnus, what are some of the things, as Murray said, that are going into it? That's an intriguing term. What are some of the challenges that you're looking to overcome on this?
I think many of the things have been said clearly about it, and I think ISO is driving and helping us to drive towards this, to help the customers, and that's our main focus, to make sure that we make it easy and simple for them. But we also have a company, all of us, that we're trying to make sure that our ecosystems work and make sure that that functions. But I think that's the good thing about the ISO standardization, that it's not requiring us to change things internally. It is basically doing this externally with cloud connections, because we have a long history of different formats and things, all of us, and any company, by the way, if it's us or anyone else. So for us to change things internally would be, a huge task. That's something that is almost impossible, I would say. But the function of the cloud setup, I think, is brilliant. I think that is something that will drive the business, and agree, the OEMs are completely connected into this. And I think the industry as a whole has been requiring and needing this for a long time. So I just believe everything is going the right direction. It's a good thing for the industry. It's a good thing for all of us.
So in terms of the advantages, if any, of tech being integrated by machine OEMs, Murray, how do you see that? What are the key advantages for customers? And that's what it has to be all about, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is. When you start looking at technology, certainly new technologies, it typically starts in the aftermarket. OEMs are looking for consistency, looking for reliability. To take a lot of chances is not something an OEM wants to do out of the gate. So a lot of technology starts in the aftermarket. And then as adoption increases, then the users start to say, hey, you know what? I'm using it. I want to use it all the time, but I want this to come from the factory. So the OEMs then start to make that move. That whole process takes a long time, and over the years, now where we are, technology has a tremendous impact on the success or the productivity of a customer on a job. It used to be that it was all about the machine. In reality, technology can have as much or actually more impact than just the machine itself. So the OEMs are certainly embracing now, getting into it. And once an OEM is on board, it truly validates the technology. And then the other thing that OEMs can do is they can really manage the workflow a lot better. And the market for us is so large, and the adoption really is, at this point in time, is so low. It's good from overall business, I think, for all three of us.
Okay, Elwyn, how do you see this about the tech being integrated by machine OEMs?
Well, Guy, I would say that no one understands more about the performance of a machine than the OEMs. They are the experts in how that machine operates and how it performs. So I see the collaboration between machine OEMs and technology vendors as really a win-win, the best of both worlds, if you will, for the industry. Obviously, we here at Trimble have been involved in this with Caterpillar for over 20 years now, so a long-standing relationship of putting together the experts in the machine performance with experts in technology to get the best performance out of the machine. Increasingly, through that joint venture, through that relationship, but not just with Caterpillar, but obviously what we see with other OEMs as well, we see more and more of that kind of core technology, the sensors, coming from the factory. Key to me is that as they put more of those sensors on the machine, that we have open interfaces that allows the technology componentry, the user interface, if you will, to leverage those integrated sensors, that integrated components, so that we, again, really bring the best of both worlds to bear.
Great. And Magnus, how do you see this side of things?
Yeah, well, again, being last here, it's hard to be, innovative enough here. But
you won't always be. Don't worry.
Okay, thanks. I was sort of making. I agree, with the group so far. It's easier to get the availability of the different solutions to the market, and also the different levels. You could almost argue that 2D should be standard on most machines today, at least grading function machines. And that's also something that is getting more and more out from the OEMs. 3D, depending on the machine types, is getting a bit more also available on the OEM side, which is great. But I think also we, from an aftermarket and a technology provider, we do have a very significant part in this, and that is we are driving certain different technology that the OEMs, they are partnering to get, which is the way it should be. I think we should also look at how can the tech on the machines be upgradable, or the next phases of the next generations, because we are standing in most likely in front of another sort of shift in technology coming, I'm assuming not far away from now. We all have the same goal, is that the customer is supposed to be more productivity and all of this that we always talk about. We want them to utilize technology to gain as much as they can for their company. So I think it's a lot of advantages for the OEM when they are actually doing this, and for us in collaboration with them.
Great. Well, if I can stay with you, Magnus, to what extent can BIM be extended to smaller projects? And if you can talk a bit about over what timescale that might come in, and what possible benefits will it bring to customers?
Well, I think first of all we talk about BIM, and BIM has been talked about for quite a while, right? It's actually not a new term; it's almost an old buzzword. We can talk about it, BIM or SIM or whatever we put on it. Today, you already have the possibility for smaller customers to get almost that kind of ecosystem already. I think the larger the companies get, the more sort of complex their ecosystem becomes. So the smaller one is, I think, quite easy, and I'm saying easy with maybe not the ease that it is, because it's always a change when you bring in new technology. But you have solutions today from all of us here on this call, and you also have it on, I think, other third party that can bring you to a level which is very close to BIM sort of solution. Yes, all of the field units have solutions that will then communicate and talk and have the right model and the same model and so on, yes, but there's not the complete step towards BIM for them. But maybe that's the one they need to take, because you cannot take the biggest step. It's not the easiest thing to do. So I recommend many of them to start in a smaller ecosystem and then build in the complexity that different customers have as they go, next steps.
And Murray, in terms of this being extended to smaller projects, is this something that the sort of small to mid-sized customers are asking for? If so, what are some of the challenges faced with them using this type of technology, and how long will it take for this BIM modeling to be much more used on the sort of small to medium projects?
Well, I follow right in behind what Magnus was saying. Yes, BIM is a workflow around models, from the planning to the design to the building and to the maintenance afterwards. Those are typically around large projects, large contractors, because they're tracking all of that. But for the smaller contractors, a slimmed down version is there. We all are developing these simpler systems where somebody can go off and take our tools, they can go out and they can create their own design. They can create then a model from that, and they can put it in the machine, they can actually do the work, and then they take that off and they can go validate it. They're creating a digital twin. They're documenting what they built, just like the larger contractors are, but not with all the additional resources, with all the additional costs that go into it. And so while it doesn't produce all the extra data, it produces what is key for those smaller contractors.
Yes, and I think that's crucial, isn't it? It's got to be a good bang for their buck, so to speak. It has to pay off. There's no point investing in the full-on BIM modeling if it's not suited to your project, your application. And Elwyn, how do you see this on this side of the market for the smaller projects?
I think there's a couple of interesting things at play here. First of all, I think we're seeing more BIM requirements from some of the public roads authorities, the DOTs here in the US, Highways UK, Norwegian Public Roads, some of these progressive entities that are experimenting with and driving more requirements for BIM-based workflows or BIM-based data delivery. I think interesting about that is if you think about the landscape of civil construction projects, road projects in particular, there are more road projects that are actually really small than there are big highway new builds, right? So lots of small, intersection remodels, or overpass redesigns, and so on. And so as we see these owners, these regulatory bodies requiring BIM workflows, I think that's really driving smaller contractors to experiment and to learn and to get more comfortable with this way of working. I think that's great for the industry. I think for where we are now, for many of these smaller contractors, it's change, and sometimes change can be challenging. It's new requirements and new ways of working. But what I think is fascinating is as new contractors and smaller contractors come into the industry, and frankly, new engineers and surveyors and so on, straight out of school, they come in with a BIM way of thinking, right? They come in what I call BIM native, and so they're driving us as the technology vendors to offer more solutions and to improve the usability and the workflows within our solutions, because us here on the call today, we come from a CAD-based, and in many cases, I would say a PDF-based kind of background, very point-and-line oriented. And so we are having to upgrade our solutions and our capabilities to make it easier to use BIM models from start to finish in the project.
Yeah, it's very interesting. You mentioned about it's stipulated in contracts, because obviously there's a lot of that now on emissions. It's very interesting that's now on the BIM and potentially the wider machine control. You have to have these models to get the work, which is a very interesting scenario. And obviously then that pushes further forward the need for you guys to collaborate to have solutions that customers need to get work. Murray, I'd like to move on next to talk about the practical extent of current autonomous operation and on machine control. What are the barriers to further adoption? What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, well, the reasons for autonomous vehicles is legit, and it's here. From a standpoint, it's hard to get people to come into our industry. It's certainly extremely difficult to get skilled labor, skilled operators. It takes a long time for them to get up to speed. So it's there. There's other factors to make it practical. Performance has to be better than what you're getting today. And early on, any technology starts off slow and has hiccups here and there. And so you get a push to implement it and get that going. As far as its safety, regulations are a big barrier, not only for what we're seeing on a construction site, just even with cars. You look in the automobile industry, Tesla, in 2007 said by 12 they'll have fully autonomous cars on the road, and here we are, 11 years later, and they're still trying to get through it. So that's just something that the government, I think, is really going to have to step in. There's got to be some change in regulations.
And Magnus, what's your thoughts on this subject?
Legislation is a key pillar. Safety awareness is a key pillar. We all know that today we have different autonomous solutions already out there, and next steps will be fully autonomous applications, and it could be the roller perhaps that comes first. We can do it, and it's here, but again, that's when legislation and safety comes in play. And I think the governments, as you said, Murray, has huge a role into this. And then when you also then look at it from a project standpoint, when you try to tender for a job, it has to be more rigid and say, hey, if you're going to be able to tender for this job, you have to actually have these kind of safety solutions. I can sadly say that today still they are discounting on that side of the tender. Even though everyone knows how unsafe we have the situation on the construction sites.
Yeah, that's interesting that it's not counted perhaps as much as it should be in tenders. That's very interesting. And from your side, Elwyn, is this something that Trimble customers are talking to you about? They want more autonomous solutions. What can you do for me? What are they saying to you?
Yeah, absolutely, Guy. We have so much pull from customers wanting to try out autonomous solutions. A really strong industry. As Murray said, it's about safety and it's about the labour shortage in the industry. The promise of autonomy is pretty huge. But as Magnus said as well, we have a long road to hoe. But I must say, from Trimble, we showcased autonomy technologies at our Dimensions user conference last year. We're making a lot of inroads in this area. And just last month, we deployed a fully autonomous compactor onto a large hydro dam project in Canada as part of a test program. Don't get too excited yet. It's not something that's ready for prime time. But we had over 40 hours of operation of our fully autonomous compactor on this site.
Early results?
Very exciting. I wasn't able to go up there myself. This project was in the very far reaches of British Columbia, hard to get to. But lots of videos from our team that were very exciting to see. The operations, a place and compact operation, so it was super exciting to see the machines coordinating and the compactor doing its task. I would say we learned a lot from putting that onto a real customer site. Lots of takeaways for us, a lot of focus on the mission, what we call the mission planning. Again, if you think about an autonomous operation, it's not just about the task that the machine is doing, but it's all of the kind of surrounding information about how you instruct a machine to go do a task and where and what to do when it finishes and so on. But the video footage I saw for sure of the dozer spreading the material and the compactor, fully autonomous compactor operating behind it was a huge leap forward for us and something I was very excited about.
Just on that testing, how much longer are you doing testing, and are you going to release any results to the market about what you found in a formal sense?
I'm not sure yet. The test in Canada was the start of a customer-involved testing program. Given the safety concerns around autonomy, this is not your usual 6 weeks of beta testing and put it out to market kind of project. Be very clear on that. We're expecting to test on customer sites over about the next 18 months.
That's great. Moving on to data capture. Obviously, all this technology we're talking about generates vast swathes of data. How can customers utilize it in real time potentially to reduce rework and to have more optimal work sites and results? And obviously, how can that benefit the sort of carbon outputs and use of resources, so more scarce use of resources? Magnus?
Well, I think it's not about how much data we produce, because we do produce a ton of it. The question is what we do with it and how we simplify usage for simple applications that can guide or give sort of guided decision making for customers. Not to tell them what to do, but to say, hey, this means this amount of earth or dirt move, blah, blah, blah. This is where it's gone. So I think it comes down to utilize data in the best, easiest way for the customers. As an example, I just mentioned this dirt moving exercise, but I think it also is coming down to, as you said, it's about the carbon footprint, but it's also quality. Because when you come to this scenario where you actually know exactly where you are on the model constantly, you also are following spec. When you follow spec, the asset lives longer. So I think all of these things in combination with the amounts of data, but it's, again, how do you make it easier for the customers to be guided by this tangible data that you're getting?
Murray, if we can turn to you, just in terms of the potential real-time use of this data, how far, and obviously I could widen this to all of you, how far are we off from you getting instant data in the operator cab? They can react very, very quickly to this. So there's the analytical later, but there's an immediate benefit. What's happening in that area in terms of machine control and operability?
As Magnus said, actually that's happening today. So the machines are connected to the office connected to the machines, and that data can pass back and forth. To take it to the next level is it's got to be connectivity between all parties. So as from a standpoint, you got your machine to machine, machine to office, you need to have the machine or the connectivity to the subs, you need to have connectivity to the engineers. So as things are going along, if there's a change order, that instantaneously is getting out to the field so that you're not doing a couple extra days or a day or two of work that's not right, because rework means you did it wrong the first time. So if you make sure you do it right the first time, you're eliminating those, and which again minimize your carbon footprint. And then I think with that data, if you're connected in real time, so you have that connectivity, it's not just about what they're doing in the office with it, but how do they integrate that within their whole system within the company. So if it gets into their planning and scheduling, so that it automatically updates in real time the schedule, okay, then everything is on track. You're not always behind the 8 ball or doing things that late in the game. So I think that integration and that connectivity are key pieces to make this real time, that you're getting the, as Magnus said, useful data.
And from a Trimble perspective, Elwyn, in terms of, is there a sense of you trying to empower the customer, empower the machine operator so they can make more decisions quicker themselves based on accurate real-time information?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Guy. It's very much about empowering people with information to make faster decisions. I always tell new people at Trimble that you have to go onto a construction site to really see in action the complexity of all of the different tasks that are happening at once. And so the more that we can help people manage by exception, and when I say that, I mean the old classic, throw up a red flag on a screen that says something is not right here. This machine is not performing at the productivity that we expected. We are not making the kind of progress that we expected. How do we give them tools that they can then, I call it double click, to find out more? Why is that machine not as productive as we expected? Is it the operator? Is it an issue with the machine? Is it an issue with the design? So again, really optimizing that whole process and that whole task through the use of data and analytics to empower people. I think that there is huge opportunity in construction to do more of this. When you talk about sustainability and reduce carbon outputs, a lot of that, as Murray referred to, is about rework and reducing the need for rework, identifying problems early in the process so that you don't have to take up all of that asphalt and start over or whatever. But it's also very much about optimizing materials usage. I think so much of the waste in the industry comes from materials that spoil or materials that aren't laid per the specification, and that is a huge opportunity for us all to impact the industry positively in that regard.
That's great stuff. And if I could stay with you, Elwyn, on the potential for site safety of adopting the very latest and future machine control technologies. What's the sort of the key safety benefits as you see them for your customers?
I think from a safety benefit, it's a no-brainer, Guy. I mean, I think the fewer people you have moving around the machine is the number one opportunity to impact safety on the job site. And we've seen that from the very early days as we got started in this technology.
Fantastic. And Magnus, your perspective here on the safety aspects of adopting the technology.
Well, I think this is one of the most important things to be able to get to autonomy overall, right? So we need to get safety sorted, otherwise we're not going to get to the next step. I would say that all of us here on this call, I'm quite sure, are doing the same thing, and also the OEMs. We're working hard to make sure we have sensors on the machines, to make sure that we actually are getting to the next step. We have to make sure that if we have sensors on the machine, why are we not making sure that we can standardize certain things to be able to communicate with these sensors? Sometimes we're putting additional sensors on even though the sensors are there, right? And I think that is a key thing to make this happen. All in all, I would say legislation is also, a driver into this as well, because I think that even though we are driving towards this because it's a logic to create technology, create safer machines, I think that, to have less people around the machines is a logic completely. But without legislation to support this, it's going to take longer time. And that is what concerns me sometimes, that we are not seeing maybe a higher interest, I would say, from legislators.
Sure. And Murray, from your perspective on this, on the safety aspect of this technology?
Customers, they're asked about what are their top concerns. Safety is always one of the top 2 or 3 items. So from a customer standpoint, it's very high. As Elwyn said, from the autonomy standpoint, you're creating all these sensors. Now, those sensors now can be used to create bubbles around the machine. And so in reality, safety can come before autonomy, because autonomy has a lot more things. And so now the move towards it, though, is benefiting the safety side. So now we'll be able to go off and actually create safety systems, put those in place, I think, before we get to these fully autonomous vehicles on a job site. It's got to be a push from more than just the 3 of us or the equipment manufacturers to get there.
Great stuff. And this, I've opened the floor now to all of you. The last question on the next steps for leading technology suppliers around machine control, obviously leading suppliers like yourself. And I'd also like to throw in the mix AI. What role will AI play in machine control technology? Because AI is, chatbots, we're writing about it all the time now in the construction world, in the quarrying world, this is now coming in. What do you see as the next steps, and what role will AI play in machine control technology?
I think, first of all, we mentioned it, so many of us already, but collaboration is one of the things we are putting one of the key focus on. And I think it's the industry that needs to collaborate. And, we are also talking across the industry, and we're doing this, which I think is great. We're doing it with the industry overall, we're doing it with OEMs, but this is one of the next important steps to get this to increase. We need to have more new technology that is increasing support for easier data capture and then safety, as we discussed. That is on top of our minds. Then AI come in as a supporting function to all of these things. And I think we all are looking at it and working on it in different ways. And Hexagon is doing this in all the different divisions we have, which is going into different parts of either manufacturing or for heavy construction or mining. We will collaborate much more internally to also make sure that AI is getting where it needs to go for the heavy side. And to me, I would just underline again, collaboration. We need to get to collaboration to get to the next step, because we cannot have these bubbles that are working, in different areas. We need to have connected ecosystems. Yeah. Connected ecosystems is what the customer really needs for the next steps.
Part of it is continue to educate the market. If you look at it, while there's certain regions, certain people that are utilizing this technology, it's very low. It's a continual education is key for the adoption and, the productivity gains and everything else that we need to see. I think another thing is from the government side. Magnus was talking about these bids and everything else. There's really no incentive to go off and invest in technologies. And other countries in Europe, in Japan, they actually invested money. They gave them money to invest in the technology, because when people start to use it, they see the success, then they build onto it. And I think that has to come from the government. So I think that's a key thing that we need to work on. And as Magnus said on the AI, it's new. There's a lot of thing there. There's a lot of potential and a lot of unknowns. Yeah, it is a buzzword. And whether it's Wall Street, whether it's our industry, everywhere, AI is there, but it's definitely going to be a key piece of all 3 of our companies down the road.
And Elwyn, where do you go next with the likes of Murray and Magnus on the next steps for leading suppliers like yourselves on machine control?
For us, we have a big focus on connecting the data together, as we talked about previously. Here at Trimble, we talk a bit about the bid to build process. That's right. So starting all the way at how you estimate a job and trying to close that loop out and optimize the execution of the job against the estimate. Again, it's really about efficiency, it's really about optimization, it's really about careful use of resources. That's a big focus for us, connecting all of those pieces together, helping contractors get paid faster, important for the industry as well. Another key area of focus for us is on empowering small contractors. So as Murray said, really the adoption of technology in the industry is still very much in its infancy. There is an enormous number of smaller contractors. So we have a big focus on simpler, easier to consume, easier to install, easier to learn solutions that can bring new, smaller contractors doing septic systems and agricultural work and basements and landscaping and those kind of smaller jobs and really empowering them with technology as well. Maybe to touch, Guy, I should have linked back to your question on AI. I mean, very much for us, AI is tied into our data strategy and how we can mine and analyze and turn what I call descriptive analytics, describe what happened in the past, into increasingly prescriptive, predictive and prescriptive, where you can identify what is likely to happen as a result of what has happened in the past and prescribe alternative solutions. That's the journey we're on here at Trimble. We've got some really interesting projects underway to prove that out.
Thank you. I really enjoyed that. You all made a lot of really good points.
Great to see you all, by the way, again.
Thank you, everybody. Really nice talking to you. Thank you.